In today's show, we discuss, has neuroscience proved the existence of the human soul?
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasula and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Taya Boya. Taya, hello, my friend, once again. I hope you keep safe and well.
I am, as soon as I put my right glasses on, yeah. Oh, it all happens round mine, I promise you.
Are you going to say the magic words to our audience?
Well, if you give me a half a moment, yeah, I will. Crikey, jeez. Hello, audience. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, for God's sakes. Am I banging? Can you hear anything on the microphone? I seem to be banging my boom arm. Anyway, where was I? Thank you for joining us today. And today I'd like to share with the audience that failing to subscribe to the TNT Talk Show definitely results in your spam emails to us being more easily detected. And on that note, I'd like to thank you, Deji of Lagos, Nigeria, for your email pretending to be our email service provider and for your attempt to get us to click on a dodgy link. Sadly, you
From
failed.
Nigeria, yeah?
From Lagos, Nigeria. I did track down the IP address and everything. But you at least listen to our show, and we're grateful for that. So just keep on listening, and better luck next time. Have a lovely day.
Now, our wonderful watching and listening audience, on whatever platform you happen to be on, please continue to like, comment, and subscribe to our show. Obviously, it helps our ratings, it helps our numbers, so please continue to do that. And yes, please continue to send in any comments, whether you like the show, whether you like what we cover, anything about Tyre you don't like, and any other sort of thing along those lines. Keep those messages coming in. We do appreciate them, and we do answer them eventually at some point, so please keep them coming in. Right,
Question time with Tayo now.
oh yes, I keep forgetting this bit. Go on, go for it.
Why do people in Hawaii and San Francisco pay their mortgages? Surely they can just roll the dice and just hope for the big one to come.
That was the worst joke ever.
It's not a joke. It's not even a joke.
It's a joke.
Why?
Well,
I mean, if you're waiting every day for the big one, you can roll the dice and just go, nah, by the time they sort it out in court, maybe it'd have come. And if they haven't, as long as you're saving some of the money, you can just pay up front. I'm not trying, I mean, you have to think about it, but it's like, if you work out the maths properly, you can save yourself a whole bunch of money. Because you're not saying you're not going to pay. You're just hedging your bets a bit.
yeah, that's quite. Do you want to explain for the benefit of some of our listeners that are not in America and understand the significance of what you said?
Well, those two areas are famously waiting for a catastrophe. And what is amazing is that people still live there. San Francisco is waiting to slide into the ocean, basically. And anyone wants to see what that might look like in a very cinematic way can watch the film with Nicolas Cage. Was it Nicolas Cage? Called 2012.
No, not Nicolas Cage.
You sure?
Yep, definitely not Nicolas Cage.
Okay. Well, it was called 2012, and it's very cinematic, and all sorts of disastrous things happen. Well filmed for the era. And the people in Hawaii, they're waiting for the volcano to go off, the big one. and why, in the meantime, why are you paying your mortgage? It's just like, you put it off as much as you can. I'm not saying don't pay, just like, okay, I'll give you 25% this year, and you just keep pushing it back and back and back. And then either you shuffle off this mortal coil, or the big one hits. One way or another, it ain't going to be your problem. It's going to be someone else's problem.
That's a very morbid way of looking at it. And in fact, there are many places on this planet that are equally as bad if that's
What
how you
happened?
view it.
What
Like
happened? I can't hear
Yellowstone,
you.
for instance. You can't hear me now.
Look,
Oh,
you're
my
breaking up. You're
internet
just
connection is
fading out.
unstable. It is. It's me. It's me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me
I
now?
can now. I can hear you now.
Yeah, it was me. We got a problem with the internet here. I just had a big message appear. My internet has become unstable.
Oh, dear.
Oh, hold on. So let's wait a moment and then we'll start again.
It's no empty air, I think it's called in radio, when no one is speaking. So whilst we have air and Tony is occupied with his internet palaver, you remember how he always says if you want to write in and complain about complain about me, Tyler, he always says. I want you to write in and be as graphically humorous as possible about Tony's bald pate. Now that would be fun, and then I promise to read out the best, and he will wish he hadn't started this segment because I'm sure that some of you listening I go, oh, you shouldn't have said that, man. That's a challenge. And every time
I'm gonna
he goes,
forbid
he
Tyler
says
from reading
again.
any joke about my bald head.
Well, he actually edits the things that you hear. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to start on. By the way, I'll put it up on the screen next week, I believe. It was going to be a surprise, but it's okay. I'll put up on the screen where you can find us on TikTok because I'm putting us on TikTok, and I promise the bold things will be on the show. You can't do anything about that. That will be me putting it up. So he keeps on not saying writing and knock off Tyre. Oh, okay, fair enough. Tyre strikes back. The Empire strikes back.
Anyway, let's move on with the show, and then enough of these shenanigans.
Yes.
Today's topic. Now, this is one of yours, I think, but I
Yes.
quite like the look at it, and it's called "Has neuroscience proved the existence of the human soul?" Now, what made you come up with this?
Well, I was watching a video, and the gentleman in the video was is a neurosurgeon of some repute, and he's had some experiences and met some patients and done some things in neurosurgery that leads him, a former atheist, led him, a former atheist, to become a theist and to become religious, because what he saw convinced him that the brain is not the source of consciousness, and therefore there is something like a soul. And just carrying on from that,
I think okay, I did see that video actually, and I'm not sure he actually said soul. He said that the mind.
Neither did I.
Oh, okay.
I said this is not the source of consciousness, but he did carry it on. That's why he became religious.
Right.
He didn't become religious because he thought there was a mind. He
No.
became religious because he felt that there's a soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
The soul is an interesting one because that is who we are, isn't it? I suppose it's our internal thing that makes us human, makes us alive. Otherwise, we might as well be an AI effectively. But we can rationalize. We seem to do things that a machine cannot do, and it seems to be away from our body. So I get it, but whether you make the leap from that to then suggest there's a soul, you can make a case for the mind or the consciousness not being part of the body, but whether that then makes that extra step to say, well, that's a soul, so that means it must be you must have a deity. There's no, that's a decision that someone has made themselves. There's no evidence of that, but there is certainly arguments of consciousness and the mind itself being separate from our physical body, the that we have. So we're not just a meat machine. Do you know what I mean? There is things going on that seems to be away from the mind, from the brain. Sorry, so the mind and consciousness could be perceived as being elsewhere. But we're going to discuss that. What's your view, having watched that video? And we will share that in the blurb of this show, so you can view it yourself. It's only about half an hour, so it's not very long. Yeah, what's your view, Ty? I know you said you were interested by it, but
I wasn't absolutely convinced. I mean, there are counter arguments that are very specific and very difficult for a facts and evidence man, such as myself, to refute. Confute? That's not the word. Refute. There are very, very specific things that are hard to refute. And because they're hard to refute, you cannot come to the conclusions that I believe that he came to. Now, obviously, I do believe in the afterlife, etc., etc. So it's just that I think his arguments are just not convincing to me, but they are very interesting. And in fact, they are quite, in some ways, alarming. Because one of the arguments in particular, one of the pieces of evidence that he sort of lightly brushed over, possibly because it is so difficult for his position, is this idea of a superposition of two different wills when the brain is disconnected. So we have to, the hemispheres of the brain is disconnected. So for those who don't know, we humans have got a two-hemisphere brain. I mean, hemisphere, I think is already two, isn't it? So you have a two-hemisphere brain, a right brain and a left brain. And there is a bridge between them, which got some blooming Latin name I'm not going to try to pronounce. And if you disconnect that bridge, the two brains are two hemispheres, sorry, the two hemispheres are effectively not speaking to one another, not communicating with one another. Now, the right brain controls, is connected to the left eye. And the left brain is, on the contrary, connected to the right eye.
the right side of the body as a whole, actually.
Okay.
The left brain, left hemisphere controls the right part of your body. The right hemisphere controls the left part. It's quite strange. It crosses over in the brain stem to the rest of the body, which is quite unusual. But it is what it is.
So thank you, Tony. so some clever clogs came up with this idea of, now I don't know what it looks like. It was described to me, so textually, it is a split screen, if you like, and things are flashed on the screen quicker than the eye can react, which is approximately 1 to 200 milliseconds. The eye reacts in about 300 milliseconds. So anything quicker than 300 milliseconds is too quick for the eye to scan. So if the eye cannot jump from the left screen to the right screen under 3 milliseconds. And if you flash an image on the screen for 100 or 200 milliseconds, it's too quick for the eye to cross over. So the left eye can't go to the right screen, and the right eye can't go to the left screen. Effectively, you are communicating with only one hemisphere. And that's how they did this experiment. So they're communicating with only one hemisphere. And what they did was they set up some objects on a tray, and then they flashed one object on one screen and another object on another screen. Let us say I'm just giving an example here. Let us say they flashed a spade, like for example, or a fork or whatever, on one screen, and a small ping pong ball, tennis table ball on the other screen. Then they said to the person, pick up what you saw. The brain would pick up, on the one hand, the fork, and on the other hand, the tennis, the
Ping
ping
pong
pong
ball.
ball, right? There is no unitary, according to these people, there's no unitary mind that decides we saw this. I saw just the one thing, and then override whatever message it got from the eye. In the sense of ignoring false input, or what we consider to be false input. So we can use what we think is our willpower, at any rate, to ignore something and say, yeah, I see that pretty girl standing by the side of the road, but I am more concerned about the fact that I am doing 60 miles an hour and I'm rapidly approaching a stationary truck. I've got bigger things to worry. So you can choose to ignore that distraction. And I'm saying, in the same way, you can choose that. We think we can choose. So if there was a unitary mind, why doesn't the mind just say, no, actually, I believe it was the fork. I'll just pick up the fork. Or I believe it was the
The ping
ball.
pong ball.
And so now that's one case, but the one that really convinces materialists, people who don't believe in the soul and just believe that there's nothing but matter, was when they showed one side, because I think it's the right side, the right hemisphere, doesn't talk, it's mute.
That's not distinctly true,
Let's
actually.
not let's not
In
confuse what
male,
I know.
yeah,
Let's not
no,
confuse what I know. So no confuse, because what I read was
okay.
it's mute as opposed to the left hemisphere, which can talk. So the more talkative one was then you can correct me later. Then the more talkative one was asked the question, "Do you believe in God?" And the other, that's the right hemisphere, was shown a placard or an image which just said God question mark. The left hemisphere said, yes, I believe in God. And the right hemisphere said, no, I don't believe in God. Well, it didn't say I don't believe in God. It said no. So it was choose yes or no. So the left said yes, and the right said no. And then the materialists are like, aha, how is that possible? It should just be the one thing. And I think that's very, very interesting. And I was arguing, I made an argument with the AI, and the AI was like, no, that's a strong argument. But
No, the thing
it's
is,
interesting.
just to jump in there,
Mm.
the experiment that they did was mostly correct, but not fully correct, because there are some discrepancies in the argument of the left and right brain.
Mm.
We've often heard jokes about men compartmentalizing their brain and can only do one thing at once, whereas women are more skilled, they can multitask, etc. There's actually some element of truth in that, because a man and a woman, for instance, you said the speech part of the brain,
Mm.
that is true for a man. It's more in the left hemisphere of the brain. So
Mm.
if a man was to have I think we touched on this before in previous shows, we've mentioned it anyway. If a man's in a head-on collision in a car and gets brain damage, they can lose their ability to speak, especially if the left side of the brain is
Mm.
damaged in the accident. A female brain, however, her speech is spread more evenly across both hemispheres. So if one of the parts of the hemisphere, either hemisphere gets damaged, her speech is not impacted.
I
It can
see.
reroute. That's the difference between a man and a woman's brain. And
Is this?
also, there's some biological differences.
Mm.
A woman's brain actually has more connections between the left and right hemisphere,
All right.
biologically.
Is this why they never shut up? I've been dying to since you went that
That's
way.
a
I was just
joke.
like,
Been
oh
waiting
my
for that.
god, I'm going to So hang on. Also, I remember this comedian. I don't know who sent who the video. You sent it to me. I sent it to you. There was this guy. He was explaining about the male brain and the female brain, Was it you that sent it to me?
Yeah.
And then all the spaghetti
Yeah, yeah.
and everything. So if they got all these connections, that goes and then
Yeah.
they just like the spaz out, I suppose, fritz out. I
That's
think it's probably.
why. That's why. It's not. It's not. I know it's a joke in that part that women talk too much and they dwell over problems too much. Yeah, it's because they cannot or cannot as much. The men are better at it. Men can compartmentalize things. So if they have a traumatic situation, a man can put it in a box and leave it there for now and deal with other stuff as if almost as if it hadn't happened. It will be festering in the corner, but it can be in a box. Women can't do that as easily. It seems to the brain, the way that the woman's brain is wired, it would appear that is harder to do. I'm not saying they can't do it, but it's harder for them to do it because it mingles in with the other elements of their being. So it is harder. So this example here, just to put in for our listeners and viewers are wondering, well, why was the brain split in the first place? This is actually a procedure for people who are schizophrenic or have seizures, because if you have a seizure, it's very debilitating, your whole body spasms, etc. And what they discovered was that if they actually split via surgery the two hemispheres of the brain, if one part of the brain becomes like they have a seizure or some sort of fitting, it only affects the one hemisphere. So they're more able to deal with it because it's only affecting one side of their body rather than both parts of their body. So they can their symptoms are less acute, and so it gives them a better quality of life. But the knock-on effect of having this split between the two hemispheres is the body will cooperate, but there are examples of the body being like two individuals. There's certain examples of that. There's even examples where for individuals who've had this surgery, they tried to do something and one of the arms refused to do it because it was being controlled by the other hemisphere and didn't agree with what the other hemisphere wanted to do. And it was bizarre to see. And there's videos on it as well where people are almost arguing with themselves because the two halves of the brain are like two almost different people.
I wonder if that is where the medieval or maybe even pre-medieval, who knows, the ancient idea of an angel and a demon sitting on either shoulder, each whispering into your ear.
Well,
That because I suppose from a pre-technological, pre-science age, what I suppose you should call so-called enlightenment, that would have been something that had been observed, and then people trying to explain that would have said, well, there's obviously good and evil speaking to, and then to the individual, and then the individual chooses. So it kind of fits a little bit.
It's an interesting viewpoint, but it's more fundamental than that, because we often talk about the subconscious part of your mind and the conscious part. It's a bit more complicated than that. And there was a famous doctor whose name now escapes me, who wrote
TNT talk show. Welcome.
He won the Nobel Prize with something else, and I'm trying to remember his name. It will come to me. And he wrote a very famous book about how the mind works called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Thinking Fast and Slow.
Thinking Fast and Slow. It's very deep. It's not an easy read, so don't think you can just pick it up and read it in an afternoon. It certainly is not that sort of a book. However, what he goes on to say is that the brain itself, you can liken it to the conscious and subconscious. You've got a fast part and a slow part. And the fast part is responsible for looking after you as a body. It wants to survive. It's looking for its best interests physically, emotionally, etc. But it's more primitive and it works 24/7. It literally is responsible for your breathing, your eating, living, and making sure it's functioning. The slower part of your brain is the part which is more logical. It can think, it can make decisions, and that seems to show that that came after the first part, and it doesn't need to stay awake. It can go to sleep. So it leaves the running of the machinery, which is your body, to the fast part of the brain, because that's the reactive side that looks after you. However, the reactive side, the fast part, is more primeval. It's looking for its self-interests, whereas it'll think, well, if there's food there, I'm going to get it first. You know, that sort of thing. And the lust, they say, is there in the human psyche. But the slow part of the brain, which is the deliberation side, the thinking side, is the one that's a problem solver, can look at things, can look at it and deal with them with logic. However, the fast part is more powerful because it's your primeval stuff keeping you alive, and it will knock the slow part out when it wants to. So there's this battle that goes on between the two in everyday functioning of life, and the fast part wants the good stuff. Oh yeah, look at that cake, I want that now, I need it now. And the slow part, which is the logical part, oh, it's not good for our waistline, I don't want that. But the fast part again goes, I don't care, I want it now. It doesn't have delayed gratification, it doesn't think things through, it just wants the here and the now. And this has actually been proven in the brain how it works. So splitting the two hemispheres of the brain down the middle, because we don't know exactly where the fast part and the slow part fully reside in the brain, by splitting the two hemispheres in half can cause additional problems. And there have been examples where some people have had injuries to the brain and their whole personality has changed. So the argument that was made as part of this doctor who you cited did these experiments and then was an atheist and now has become a theist, believing in God. The argument was that the self, or the soul, he put it, or the mind, is devoid
you keep
from...
banging your boom
Sorry,
thing.
I keep banging my boom arm, so I apologise there. It's devoid from the brain. It's not part of it. But the fact that we had examples of people who have had brain injuries, their personalities have changed. There's been many, many examples of that. So is personality not part of yourself? Is personality just part of the body? Or is it part of the mind that lives outside of your body? Do you see what I mean? That's the bit that can't be reconciled. Why was there examples of people's personality completely changing after having a brain injury?
Well, there's a slight segue. There are cases where the post heart surgery, heart replacement surgery person has some differences, notable differences, to the pre-surgery person. And I believe, now I might look it up in a second because I should be able to give references for what I'm about to say, because it's pretty serious stuff. The pre-surgery person was in love with his wife, and I don't know if you know this case.
I have heard examples of this, yeah.
Was in love with his wife, and then he went in under surgery, he got a heart transplant, fell out of love with his wife, divorced his wife, sought out the wife of the other party, the person whose heart he inherited, fell in love with her, and married her. So that's something, I mean, I didn't even know that you'd know who gave you a heart. I don't think you should know, because how did he find this other wife thing?
Oh, no, they do sometimes say about donors, who the donor
They
is.
probably shouldn't.
I
so
know. I'm thinking
that
the
people can
same.
be happy, just don't try to live. Because psychologically, how do we know it's not even a psychological condition where he feels he owes that person something?
Well, indeed.
So you shouldn't know. Anyway, so there is that, but they're not just the one case. That's the most egregious case as far as I'm concerned. There are other cases where they stop liking this kind of food and they start liking that kind of food or something like that. So
But that
who
also
knows?
happens with brain injury as well. So it doesn't have to, you don't even have to have an organ transplant
Mm,
for that. I mean that's odd in itself because but then that all that shows that certain organs have more importance in the body than science seems to understand. And only recently science has got to grips with the vagus nerve. They didn't
yeah,
know very much about that, which is a nerve that goes from the brain. It literally touches all the major organs, and the stomach now has influence on the brain. We have got enough nerve endings in the stomach, the same as the in quantity as a cat, for instance. So if a cat is quite intelligent as an animal, that's the amount of brain cells, effectively synapses and things like that we have in our stomach. That's why the stomach can have an effect on our mind. And you've often heard my gut feeling it felt a bit weird. That's actually your gut sensing something and informing the logical part of your brain that there's something going on here. And
mm,
so that more of that is actually being proven by science and the connection of the vagus nerve between the two. So we're learning all the time. So the body parts may have a bigger part to play than we actually realize.
yes. And what is interesting is that your man's name, by the way, and for me to interrupt myself, is Daniel uh,
Daniel Kahneman.
Kahneman. There we go.
Yes, that was it. Thank you for that.
Daniel
Daniel
Kahneman.
Kahneman.
And the name of the
Thinking
chap
fast and slow.
who in the video that we're talking about is Penfold, Professor Penfold, isn't he? Is it Dr. Penfold or
Yes, he's
Professor Penfold?
Professor Penfold, not from Danger Mouse, but
Do you know I was say good night, Penfold. Good night, Penfold. Good grief.
that's a bit of a
my
segue. A
my
children's
favorite
cartoon, which was great growing
my
up.
my my favorite little sort of couplet or couplet is it or quote is exactly that. Oh, good grief. Danger
It was
Mouse.
brilliant.
Anyway, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. So the the thing that we've just spoken about the heart transplant, the snipping of the bridge between the two brains, and then the individual the distinct new personalities and so on and so forth, or distinct individuals at the same time, simultaneously. This would lead to the conclusion that matter is what gives rise to consciousness, because that would seem to be proven. If you're getting two, one arm is arguing the other arm, then isn't that direct proof that there is no singular mind, a unified mind behind our experiences?
It's a strong argument in that sense, but it's not.
Seems
It
unbeatable
doesn't
to me.
happen all the time. This is the
It
crazy
doesn't
thing.
have to. It just has to happen once or twice, and it just
Yeah.
has to be happened in such a way that it's verified. Because a lot of times, this is what happens in science. The newspapers blow something up. It happens every single year. Oh, we found the missing link. Now we know for sure that there's evolution. It really happened. Here's the missing link. And then very quietly, about 9, 10 months later, just yeah, no, actually, that was a piece of charcoal. Sorry, what? So a lot of times it's a done deal. It's settled science, and then you find out actually no. So I'm a little bit worried that we're going to find out later that there's a big problem, which you and I would have spotted instantly had we been in the room and said, no, that's not what's exactly happening there. For example, now I'm not saying this is what happened, so don't write in and complain and say, "Ah, that never happened." No, I don't know. I'm giving an example of what I might expect to find out happened later. That the person, the individual, chose something with one arm, and then the next day chose it with the other arm, and they said, you see, because they chose a different thing, the two arms weren't agreeing with one another. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
It didn't happen at the same time, because the way the story is told, you would say, what actually happened is that this arm actually grabbed the other hand and prevented it. And you think, well, what the heck is going on there? And then you go, oh no, nothing, no, it didn't happen like that. Now I'm not saying that's what happened, but I want to know more about it. Is what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, if that is what happened, it's pretty damning evidence for a unified mind.
Yeah, it is. It does imply that the brain is where consciousness then resides, in a way, that the physical body is where it's at. It doesn't live outside the mind, although there are
We're
certain
going to get
weird.
to that. That's why I
Yeah,
introduced it, because
yeah.
we're heading.
We're going there. There's
Just
too
a
many
second, though.
examples. Yeah, I know. Too many examples of, hold on a minute, what's going on here? And we're going to allude to that, I suspect. So go on. Do you want to
No,
talk about?
no, it's okay. I was laying it up for you because
Well,
you're going to
yeah,
jump in.
because even, we can say that. We say, well, based on what we've just discussed, we're just a meat machine. Everything is here. Consciousness must be in here somewhere. We haven't figured out where, but it's here because our personality, our actions, if we get some sort of injury to the brain area, then we can behave differently. Although, saying that, how much brain do we need to function properly? Because there's so many examples of children and infants and even adults who have got very little brain tissue in place because of illness or some condition at
Do you
birth.
mind if I push back on that?
Go on.
So that's what I thought. But one of the AI sort of poo-pooed that and said to me, no, you got it all wrong. And I think it's right to have pushed back. It's not that the brain. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not that the brain is got less tissue or something. It's that it's compressed. So the pictures that we saw in the video, which we're
Yeah, which
going to
we'll
share.
share. We will share the video, and it's well worth seeing
It's
some of the
that
brain pictures.
fluid
Yeah.
has compressed the brain. So the density, I suppose, is still there. The actual connections and so on is still there. When I heard about it initially, I was thinking of missing brain.
I thought that too.
It's not missing brain; it's compressed brain, just like a donut, and you've opened it up,
Squashed
but
it.
you've squished it all, so that
Yeah.
everything that was in the donut is still there. Well,
It's
just
just
more
spread out.
compressed.
Yeah.
It's compressed actually. So that's what happened. And when I heard that, I was like, oh well, it's maybe it's suboptimal because they do have learning difficulties and things like that, but it still explains why they can graduate from university.
Yeah.
It's not
Although
missing.
I'm going
I
to
thought the brain
caveat that.
wasn't there.
I am going to caveat that. Some
Yeah.
of the graduates from university now you can get through doing next to nothing. So
Ooh.
that's
Ooh.
a bit of a dig. But hey, no,
Well,
but
no, it's not a bit of a dig because no one has even said anything about gender studies. Oops.
stop it. Right, let's move on. Right, the example that we've given here has been more sort of leaning on the materialism side of things, where we are a machine and all of the functions are within in the head. Having consciousness away from the brain isn't a thing. So that means that would imply when you die and your body dies, so does your consciousness. However, and this is what we were going to sort of touch on, there are so many weirdy stuff happening that what we're about to talk about now, which I suspect is what you're mentioning here, there's some really strange episodes that have occurred, which then would imply that that is not how it seems.
Before you do that, I want us to go back to this issue of matter is all there is. My argument has always been this: why I just instinctively just say no, mind and consciousness is not matter. Is that a a carbon molecule, a carbon molecule in my brain is exactly the same as a carbon molecule in a piece of diamond. It's exactly the same as a carbon molecule in a lump of coal, right? So why does my carbon molecule know things? This is my problem. It
But it's
shouldn't.
not. It's an invasive. It doesn't know. But when you somehow put them together, they can do things that otherwise they wouldn't. The
Yeah, but
argument of looking at them in their individual state is not how it works. I
well, this
mean,
is this is a very nice argument if you want to take it that way, but I dismiss it. It's not. I mean, when we're looking at AI is simulating intelligence. It's not actually intelligent. Now we are not
that's because of
simulating.
our definition of intelligence as well.
I mean, we invent things from out of nowhere. It's not a simulation. It's from out of nowhere. We sit
Yeah,
down
I
and
understand that.
and
I'm
we
agreeing
and
with
when
you.
we look at a sunset, we say this is the beautiful sunset, and it does something. We got emotions and so on and so forth. And I want to know if you're saying that, then what is it that the carbon molecules are? If you want to aggregate them and say that there's a whole bunch of them. Well, what is it that they're doing, and what is the quality that has changed them to make them want to cry, for example? It's to me, it's just instinctively is nonsense. Is a nonsense argument, and that's what I want to say about. This is why ultimately I reject the materialist.
Well, I'm with you actually because there are too many things that don't add up. So just just putting it down to us being a material machine and everything's there, it's strange to think that way because of some of the things that occur to a lot of people, and there's examples of it, documented examples everywhere. I mean, the one I'm talking about is more near death experiences,
Mm,
NDEs,
mm,
because there are a lot of NDEs which are, the term is veridical. Now, veridical means patients who were clinically brain dead and flatlined, but they're able to accurately recount surgical instruments, conversations, events happening in the operating room upon being resuscitated. So they've been out cold, clinically brain dead, but somehow able to recount what has been happening while they've been operated on. There's no logical way of explaining that other than them watching themselves from out of their body. So what's going on there? That is a very peculiar aspect if we are just a meat machine. If everything is self-contained in our body, including our mind and consciousness, then these out-of-body experiences could not happen, could not occur, unless there's something else afoot. Either we've got some other powers that we're just not aware of, we've got some telekinesis we're not aware of, or the mind isn't located in the physical body. It does come out occasionally or lives outside in some element and then goes back in. So there's things like that. That would then pertain to a soul if it then leaves the body and can come back in rather than a mind, or however you want to use the words.
I'm not. I don't. I'm not think we even see the idea of a soul. You ask what is a soul. So, for part of my life, early part of my life, I was a Buddhist, and obviously Buddhists don't believe in the soul. Sort of a permanent Atman, if you like, a permanent thing that is permanently different. But I suppose they believe in something that goes and comes back. Actually, the reason I left Buddhism was that you could never pin down what the heck they believe. Every time you ask them, they got wishy-washy. It's very strong on the certain things right in the center. Oh, the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, all very nice, all very static and well understood. And oh, okay, I get this. I can get on board with this. Now tell me about this a little bit there. Ah, well. You need to meditate, and then it'll come closer. So what are you actually saying? What am I meditating to do? And they're like, yeah, to achieve nirvana. Good. What's nirvana? Ah, well. So after a while, just like, do you know what, guys? I'm just gonna have to bug out here because I'm tapping out, man. I don't know what you guys are up to, but it's freaking me out. Really, really annoying me at this stage. And don't even get me started about the Zen Buddhist and all. Man, I joined a website. Really getting off point. I joined a website once, and I thought this is it. They had a teacher, and I thought, this I'm going to achieve Zen. Thank God. And it was just people just writing poetry, and not particularly good poetry. And then the sun and the moon, but birds are not in the trees. I'm like, all right, well, yeah, and.
I think you weren't ready. Your teacher bit wasn't ready.
No, I was not ready to receive such wisdom. Thank you very much. So how did I lost my train of thought? I got started on the soul.
Yes.
I'm not. I want people to tell me what they're talking about, and I think that's a reasonable request. What are we talking about? So when you were talking about the mind, mind. What we got, mind? What make how you think, and the container in which you think. What is the soul? You mean personality? Because my personality and soul might not be the same thing.
No,
Why
they're
should it be
not.
the same thing?
I mean, I'm of the opinion that it's the mind that leaves the body and not a
Yeah,
soul,
yeah.
because the mind is what makes you. But I mean, here's an
What soul?
example.
We haven't even seen the soul. So I
No,
don't know
the
what soul. Mind
the
you, Christians will probably look at me going, "The hell is this guy talking about?"
yeah,
It's why can't it be? Why can't mind and soul? Why do we have the word soul? Basically, do you mind if I ask that question? Why do we have the word soul? Your consciousness, being a consciousness, if that is what the good Lord created and created you individually, it's okay. What is the soul bringing to the party?
the soul is almost like a physical image of you in spirit form, if that makes sense. A physical image in spirit form. No, but the form looks like a humanoid, so we can better relate to it being an internal part of you and then leaving. To describe just the mind, because if you remember, the the ancients didn't really know the mind as such. They just thought the bit inside here was a functioning thing that helps you to survive. So they didn't know the mind as such. They viewed it more as a whole person leaving the body. But also there's examples of ghosts being seen. And they're all, well, mostly they are humanoid looking. So the ghosts resemble humans. So if it's a spiritual thing that you're seeing and it's a see-through entity, you're making connections that, okay, if that is an image of a human but it's see-through, that must be the soul. It's a spirit, the soul of a human. So they then put two and two together, and when somebody dies, the human element of them, the spirit part, the soul, is what leaves the body, not just the mind. That's how I've always sort of thought about it.
Well, maybe because again, my growing up in Buddhism, I don't need that level of the formulation of what the mind looks like, if you like, the entity, because it's pretty nebulous anyway in Buddhist concept, and we don't really do everything in Buddhism is about mind
Yeah.
and
But then, if you think about it,
and desires. Really, I shouldn't
if
just say
some
mind.
people have witnessed spirits with their
How have
eyes,
they?
but we don't know. But there's many stories of it. Many stories
Yeah,
of
but
people
then the ministers of
seeing.
UFOs.
I
So,
know. The same. You have to keep an open mind. If they have seen these things that they've seen didn't resemble a brain, did it? They say, oh, I saw the brain sort of leave that body and then float up to the sky. It's not that sort of image that's been
I've heard of
told.
people seeing mist. I've never heard of anybody seeing a humanoid. There's a better word for it, but I can't remember. I can't think of it now. A humanoid
Human
form.
shape. A human
Yeah, no,
shape or form. No, I agree. But it's
there's
like, what's the
mist.
word? What's
People,
the
in
word?
fact, there's something called CTEs now, aren't there? Apart from NDEs, have you heard of CTEs?
What's
Which is the
CT?
new buzz thing that's pretty recent, I believe. I'll look it up in a second. Where now the research has moved on to speaking to people who were present when an individual passed and what they
Okay.
saw. And they too are beginning to report seeing the person who comes, because in these NDEs there's increasingly the idea that you never die alone,
Yeah.
that someone comes for you. And
Absolutely. They're seeing
these
something in
CTEs,
the
yeah.
window in a corner.
No, my
This
wife
is,
she worked in hospices and everything, and
yeah.
she tells me she absolutely knows the transition, the pathway, how things start going, what goes first. I mean, the poor woman has seen all sorts of things in her life,
Yeah.
and which I never did. And I'm glad I didn't. The eyesight, and then
Yeah.
the I don't know
But the
what is
hearing doesn't go, does it?
it's the last thing she says. The
Last
last thing to
thing.
go is the hearing, and they're leaving once they start looking into staring off into one part of the room or
Yeah.
something,
In the
and they're seeing
corner.
something. She
Yeah.
says, "That's it. They've come."
Yeah.
But she herself has never seen anything that the person has seen. But other
No.
people are reporting these things, and they call them CT. I'll look it up in a second. They call them CTEs or something. So
I
yeah,
mean,
very
I
interesting.
want to touch on a couple of near-death experience ones because
Well,
you just
well
seem,
documented ones,
yeah,
veridical ones.
the really documented ones. I mean, I've
Mm.
got a couple here. I mean, for the benefit of our listeners, near-death experience are people who have been at death's door and they're seeing things that then they basically shouldn't have been able to see, and they've been brought back. The doctors have saved them. Whether the doctors have saved them or whether they've been sent back because it's not their time, that's up for debate for another day. But they've certainly come back, and the testimony they've given is very similar to the testimony that a lot of people say experience of death, but they see things within the room which is so profound, it's incredible. I mean, I've got a couple here that I want to just touch on. This one here is Dr. Pim van Lommel's research. And what it was, a 44-year-old man was found comatose in a meadow. And he was brought to hospital and he was deprived of oxygen. So to intubate him, the nurse removed his upper dentures while he was out, he was completely out, and placed them in a drawer on a cart. And the man was then transferred while still in a coma. He was on a ventilator for a week, and he was finally brought back, and he was brought in the ward, and he recognised the nurse, and he went, you're the one that took my dentures out and put them on the cart. And she's like, what? You were comatose?
Mm.
How do you recognise me? She goes, yeah, you put them in that cart over there. And lo and behold, opened the drawer, and there they were. So he was out. How would he have known this? So, and that was recounted by the nurse herself about this patient. So he was aware, even though he was totally out, been brought to ICU in a coma. He was aware, even though his eyes were shut because obviously in a coma, he could see everything in the room and saw what the nurse had done. See, that's very difficult to sort of dismiss. I've got another one for called the Kimberly Clark Sharp case. And this is a lady called a migrant worker named Maria, suffered a severe cardiac arrest, and she was brought to the hospital, obviously out. Following her resuscitation, she was visited by a hospital social worker called Kimberly Clark Sharp. And Maria, this lady, told Sharp, the lady, that during her cardiac arrest, she floated out of her body, moved outside the hospital building, and while she was floating outside the hospital building, she spotted a dark tennis shoe on the third floor window ledge. And she described it in detail. Said one of the shoelaces was stuck underneath the heel and the little toe area was worn, but she could see it where she was outside. Now, Kimberly Clark Sharp, who was the hospital social worker, was a bit, skeptical. And so she went to the floor that Maria described and she pressed her face against the window really tightly and to see if she could see the third floor window. And there she could see a shoe on the window ledge. And it's like, hold on. This woman could never have seen this shoe from where her hospital bed was, which was in the other side of the hospital. How would she have seen it on this third floor window? And you could only see it if you pressed your face against the glass and really strained to look on the side. But this woman had seen it, as she described it, from outside the building, floating. So again, this woman was brought to the hospital where she was comatose. How did she see it? How? That is nuts. But the one that really got me, which I've told on many occasions, is the case of Vicky Umipeg. And Vicky was born prematurely, oxygen overload in the incubator, so it destroyed her optic nerves. So she couldn't see from birth, never had eyesight. Never even saw dark and light, in fact. She used to dream about touch, sound and smell, but never mentioned sight, ever. And then in 1973, she had a car crash, and she had a head injury, severe skull fracture, and so she was in a coma. And during the coma, she reported floating up to the ceiling of the medical centre, and she experienced sight for the first time. And she was a bit, is this sight what it looks like? And she's looking from above, and she's seeing this medical team frantically working on a body below. And because she'd never seen herself before, she didn't realise it was her on the table. And she only noticed the wedding ring. She goes, she's felt her wedding ring. It's got the same baubles on it. And the woman on the table who was comatose had a ring with the distinct baubles on it. She goes, is that me? Is that me lying on there? And she described herself floating upwards, hearing wind chimes, and then seeing deceased loved ones. Not people who are alive, deceased loved ones, including 2 blind children friends who had been blind at birth as well. She saw them and they were vibrant, healthy in this vision. And she then returned to her body and described coming back as incredibly painful and very heavy. And she described this, obviously, to the doctors and the nurses in the room, and in vivid detail, and couldn't have possibly described all these things because she'd never had sight. See, these are things, how do you explain these things? How? It just, to me, there's something going on, whether it's a soul, whether it's a mind, I don't know. But we're not just a bag of bones and that's it. There is certainly something more. Whether it's a deity, a god, we don't know that either. But it's not just a bag of bones. That's all I'm sort of about to say.
I think the blind from birth NDEs are the let's just close the book and go home, because
It's
any
like the
objection,
Holy Grail one, isn't it?
any objection I don't take seriously, because some people just never accept.
No, doesn't matter what you say. You can say, oh, well, I mean, it's like the shoe one. when the shoe was on the ledge. Ah, well, someone may have seen the shoe and mentioned it to
They
her.
mentioned it to her. She
Yeah,
overheard.
why? Number one, the shoe. Why would you mention it to a random patient who's who's in a coma at the other side of the hospital, and she couldn't eavesdrop. She was in no position to eavesdrop. So, nonsense.
But the funny thing about this is what people do, and I know that I frequently talk about videos that make me laugh my head off, which is I'm not trying to get back at anyone, but this is adding to stories about sort of feminist activists, right? So in a workplace and what they try to do and how they run into trouble, and then afterwards, when they've run into trouble, how they blame everyone else but themselves. It's never, ever, ever. You can't. So it taught me to understand that some people from their ideology, they can't be. You can't communicate with them. There's no one listening. Oops, no, I banged it. There's no one listening on the other side. And when you objections like this, when I said I didn't like what was it, Professor Penfold's. I didn't accept it because his arguments had holes in them. You can communicate with me. I'm looking at your arguments and I'm deciding. No, do you know what? Although I sort of believe what you're saying, I am on your side of the equation, but that's not very convincing. And then there are people who you tell them, well, here you are, and then they say, well, the people who reported this are lying. It's just like,
Yeah.
well, why would they? It's like maybe talking to the flat earthers.
Yeah.
You can't get through.
No.
There's nothing you can actually tell them reasonably
That they can consider and just say, look, I can agree to disagree. I've listened to your point of view. Not for me because of these reasons. They can't do that. It's just trying to knock yours down. You're lying. It's not right. Yeah, because they can't defend their point of view in a manner that can make them happy that they've positioned their point of view correctly. So the only way to not have to face it in a way is to attack it. Oh, blimey, we've reached the top of the hour. We need to sum up. Okay, very quickly. Has neuroscience proved the existence of the human soul?
No.
No. I'm the same. I don't think neuroscience has proved the soul at all. There's certainly goings on that are weird, but the soul itself, no. Something going on in this world, certainly, but is it the mind? Is it consciousness? We don't know, but neuroscience proving it, in my opinion, the same as you, no. Right. If you've loved this episode, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more deep dives into prophecies, mysteries, and the unexplained twists of fate. You've listened to Tony and Tyre, and we are the TNT Talk Show, but unfortunately we have reached the end of the show for another week.